So today, this is a new era of cooperation. Our strategic Canada-EU or EU-Canada strategic partnership for the future will, and as the most European of the non-European countries, Canada looks first to the European Union to build a better world.
Canada's participation in what's called the Security Action for Europe Agreement, or SAFE, S-A-F-E.
Europe has quietly opened a door that no one expected, and the country stepping through it is neither the United States nor the United Kingdom. In a move that reshapes decades of defense planning, Canada has gained entry into SAFE, a program built for European partners, unlocking opportunities previously thought out of reach. The implications stretch far beyond a single contract or agreement, from access to multi-billion-dollar industrial programs to a strategic seat inside Europe's rearmament strategy. This move signals a shift in global alliances. The real question is how far this pivot can reach and what it says about the future of global defense networks. Canada's inclusion in SAFE marks a milestone that startled even seasoned European observers. SAFE, designed for EU nations, had previously been inaccessible to non-European partners. Washington had never managed to gain entry, and London had attempted to join only to be blocked after costs escalated into the billions. Yet Canada entered the program with a payment of $10 million, a sum dwarfed by the United Kingdom's $6 billion estimate. Analysts interpreted this not as a question of price, but as a deliberate signal. Brussels was not purchasing influence. It was selecting a partner based on stability, predictability, and reliability in an era when traditional alliances face turbulence. This decision comes amid mounting concerns over the unpredictability of the United States. European leaders have repeatedly voiced unease over President Donald Trump's trade threats toward the EU, warning that expanded tariffs could trigger a transatlantic trade war affecting consumers on both continents. Tensions between Washington and Brussels have been simmering for quite some time, but recent policy swings have intensified scrutiny. Once rulings on trade disputes are finalized, the U.S. intends to announce tariffs on European products swiftly, demonstrating how quickly tensions can escalate. Amid this backdrop, Canada's ability to secure SAFE membership raises questions about Europe's vision for the future of industrial and defense partnerships. The negotiation process between Brussels and the United Kingdom highlights the contrast. Initially, EU officials proposed fees as high as $6 billion for UK participation, later reducing them to $2 billion. London countered with an offer of $86 million, and negotiations quickly stalled. Trust wavered, the door closed. Meanwhile, signals from Washington suggested a potential reduction in U.S. commitments and unpredictable policy shifts, prompting European officials to reassess reliance on the United States. Ottawa's approach communicated a different kind of reliability. Prime Minister Carney announced that more than 70% of Canadian defense spending would no longer flow automatically southward. To European eyes, this was not a withdrawal, but an alignment. A partner reducing dependence on Washington, while Europe was simultaneously seeking to decrease its own reliance on the U.S. In that convergence, a new space opened where a mid-sized country could offer stability and continuity. The implications of Canada entering SAFE extend far beyond diplomacy. SAFE represents a gateway into one of the largest defense industrial ecosystems in the world, a market measured not in billions, but in trillions of dollars over the coming decade. The program allocates $150 billion in targeted European rearmament funds through 2030. On top of that, a defense loan facility of roughly $244 billion is designed to accelerate production and expand capacity across the EU. This is all part of the broader Readiness 2030 plan, a long-term strategy that could mobilize as much as $1.3 trillion to build new systems, infrastructure, and manufacturing capabilities. Canada's participation places it inside this architecture, no longer at the periphery, but with access comparable to European states themselves. Canadian firms now have entry into sectors that have long been restricted, including munitions, unmanned aerial systems, armored vehicles, artillery components, and missile technologies. Europe faces capacity shortages in all of these areas, making the entry of a reliable partner even more significant. For Canadian businesses, this access functions as a strategic accelerator, opening bidding rounds previously closed to non-European producers and embedding Canadian companies into supply chains shaped by long-term European demand. In a global environment where defense spending is increasingly fragmented across regions, Canada's privileged entry provides a unique position unmatched by any other non-EU country. SAFE does more than secure contracts. It directs investment toward partners capable of expanding rapidly and consistently. For Canada, this creates an unprecedented opportunity to become a secondary production hub for Europe's defense supply chain. Analysts suggest that SAFE could draw private capital into Canadian facilities, particularly in areas where Europe faces shortages. Canada's capacity to scale in munitions, UAV components, and armored systems aligns with the EU's strategic gaps. The Canada-EU supply chain is often described as complementary. Europe contributes scale and access, while Canada contributes stability, clean energy, and strong metallurgical capacity. Together, these strengths reduce dependence on U.S. suppliers at a time when diversification is becoming critical. For the first time, Canada enters the European defense market almost as an internal partner, not an EU member, but no longer an outsider. Canadian facilities could absorb production that Europe cannot expand fast enough, and the labor implications are immediate. SAFE reshapes Canada's defense workforce by creating demand in sectors that have remained relatively modest for years. Expansion in ammunition production, counter-UAV systems, armored vehicles, and electronic warfare equipment requires specialized skills, and analysts predict thousands of positions emerging across Ontario, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada. Engineering, advanced machining, materials science, and specialized manufacturing will become central to the build-out rather than peripheral. SAFE prioritizes manufacturers that demonstrate low-carbon operations, an area where Canada holds a structural advantage. European officials have emphasized sustainability in procurement, making Canada's energy-efficient industrial base an attractive complement. As production and capacity expand, the benefits flow both ways. Europe gains a reliable partner capable of absorbing supply pressure, while Canada secures a pathway to long-term industrial capability, not merely short-term contracts. SAFE gradually reduces Canada's long-standing dependence on the United States. Moreover, Canadian defense procurement, maintenance, and upgrades have flowed almost automatically through U.S. systems. This program introduces the first meaningful structural alternative Canada has had in a generation. The broader implications extend beyond Canada. SAFE may appear as a bilateral success story, but its ripple effects point to a changing global landscape. A mid-sized country surpassing the United States and the United Kingdom in a major rearmament program signals that influence is no longer solely determined by size or historical precedents. Europe's step away from automatic reliance on Washington points to an emerging multipolar structure. A defense supply chain once anchored in the U.S. could gradually tilt toward a Canada-EU axis built on clean energy, predictable procurement, and complementary industrial capacity. The trajectory suggests a strategic pivot that is difficult to ignore. If U.S. policy continues to oscillate unpredictably, more regions may follow Europe's lead in seeking partners with fewer policy shocks and steadier long-term planning. Canada's rise may mark the start of a pattern rather than a temporary alignment shaped by timing. These quiet shifts are already influencing how countries approach procurement, build capacity, and coordinate defense planning for the next decade. Alliances that were once considered fixed are demonstrating flexibility, forcing nations to reassess assumptions about industrial partnerships and strategic reliability. The story of Canada in SAFE is also a story of timing. Europe needed stability at a moment when traditional anchors faltered, and Canada offered predictability and alignment at a critical juncture. Access to sectors previously off-limits provides Canadian companies with opportunities to compete in industrial niches with long-term European demand. Europe faces urgent gaps in artillery, UAV components, and armored systems, creating openings that Canada is uniquely positioned to fill. The combination of Canadian industrial reliability, clean energy operations, and skilled labor makes the partnership mutually beneficial. It allows Europe to absorb capacity shortages while providing Canada with access to a trillion-dollar defense ecosystem. SAFE reshapes industrial supply chains, labor markets, and